Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of At the Movies with William Fletcher. As usual, I am your host, William Fletcher, and this week I am joined by a very special guest, my dad.
Hello there, this is Shane Fletcher, father of William Fletcher, a long-time listener, first-time caller. It's great to be here. I'm super excited.
Yes. So, why have I got you here today? Why did I invite you on?
Because I'm a huge fan of the show slash movie that we're going to be talking about it. And you, having just watched it all now, I believe are also a fan. So now
Yes.
we often talk about movies and TV shows when we're not recording the conversation.
Yeah.
So let's do one where we are recording the conversation.
Mhm.
And we are talking about Firefly
Yes.
and the follow-up movie Serenity.
Yes. I think it's fair to say you have had an influence on what I watch,
Uh,
on movies and TV shows I watch, and occasionally like things I read, because you just tell me, "Hey, this is good. You should watch it."
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's reasonable. Most children, I think, are framed a little bit by what their parents watch and enjoy.
Mm,
And I've been a huge fan of Firefly since it first aired and the
mm,
movie Serenity.
mm.
And I've been telling you, I suppose, for a little while, you should watch this. It's really good.
Yeah,
And now you have. And
yeah,
now let's talk about it.
yeah. You do this with lots of shows and movies. You tell me I should really watch this, and
There are quite a few on
and
the list, and I'm sure I'll be back to talk about those when we get there.
yeah. So you have been following Joss Whedon's career, I guess, since did you watch Buffy when it first came out?
Yeah, absolutely. My daughters, I had two daughters at the time.
You still have
Buffy
two
was,
daughters.
I have three now. Is
Oh,
my
at the
point.
time. Oh, yeah.
At the time, yeah, I had two small girls, and I was looking for good role models on television because there was a dearth of good female role models on television.
Mm,
And at the time, two shows came on that I was super excited about: Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Xena Warrior Princess. I thought
mm,
they'd be great role models for girls.
mm,
And so Xena is obviously a different type of show. It's more campy and fun.
mm-hmm.
But Buffy had a lot to say about character and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
And it was a great show. I was a huge fan and still am.
yeah, yeah. Because I think you would agree with this that girls don't have a lot of great role models in films and television back then. I think now society has progressed and there's more female main characters and stuff now
Indeed, things have come a long way.
in like 20, not even 20 years.
Exactly. Like I trying to think of good female role models in movies, and all I can think of is Ripley in Alien
Mm,
and the sequels.
yeah.
And yeah, television also sparsely populated by good female characters, I think.
Mm. I think, and so I guess because you must know some of the history of Firefly, where he came up with the idea and what he knows, because Joss Whedon always likes to sort of when he creates his work, he likes to sort of flip things around. Like Buffy is very much an inverse of sort of what you assume would happen. The blonde girl is usually the first one who gets killed, and instead you rotate that, and she is the main character.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. Like I saw the movie, I guess, also of Buffy the Vampire Slayer before the TV show, which is not as good, but it was still an interesting take on flipping what's expected. It's a good storytelling device, um, and especially at the time when there's obviously a lot of cliches that you could work on and work against.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is a lot of good TV,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's with the streaming services and things like that. There's a lot more content out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, he did well. He made a good choice, I think. What an interesting movie that then became a very interesting TV show,
Mm-hmm.
which he grounded, and he's good at world building. Is the other good thing about Joss Whedon. He created Sunnydale and the high school especially, and invested it with characters that were interesting to watch, and you wanted to know what happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
And each season had a great arc. I think some better than others, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the world building is something that, and the lore of the shows that he's created. Um, he does a good story in
Mm.
creating those places.
Yeah. So Firefly was very short lived, as a TV series. It only ran for 14 episodes, right? It was.
That is correct.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if all of them aired. I think they might have, like they just had them made, so they published them, broadcast them. I mean,
Mm.
so yeah, it was. I mean, it's lived on again through the movie, and then yeah, there's a large series of comics, and there's series coming out I think monthly now by Boom Studios. So there's still lots of good content in that
Mm.
universe being created.
Yeah, and then there's, rumors every now and again of them doing a reboot of the series or possibly like another season if they wanted to. And I don't think they should reboot it because I think you shouldn't do that with, a show that is as beloved as Firefly is or with Buffy, for example. But I don't think they should, I don't really know like about doing a second season because I think too much time has passed since season one came out and sort of how everything is now with what we know about Joss Whedon. I don't think they would want to, like make another season, especially because I don't think many people would want to work with him.
Yeah, it turns out Joss Whedon is not as nice a person as you would have thought,
Mm,
with a character that was so fond of strong female characters. But, I guess that's what happens eventually. Everybody you look
mm,
up to will disappoint you in some way or
mm,
another.
yeah.
And I think you're right. I don't think they'll make a second season with the same characters. I think they're living on well in the comic books.
Mm,
But perhaps they could revisit the universe with a whole new set of characters. I think that's what the rumor is with the new Buffy TV show.
yeah.
It's a whole new set of
Yeah, it's
characters,
not like with Buffy.
a
It's
reboot with the same characters recast.
it's a new
It's a new
Slayer.
sort of thing, which is maybe something they do, but with a show that's only had 14 episodes and a movie, I don't know if there is. It's a cult classic, obviously. There's a lot of
Mm,
people love it, but I don't know if there's enough to warrant the expense of creating a new series, new TV show.
mm. So I guess you saw Firefly when it was coming out, like.
Yeah, it was before, well, long before internet streaming and before the internet gave you good access to downloading and stuff like that. I had a friend that I was watching Buffy and Angel with, who was in the States, and he was watching them live, and he was nice enough a person to actually make me videotape copies. This was back when videotape was the cutting edge technology, and sending them to me. He'd like tape a few episodes and then post a tape over to me so I could watch them before they aired here, because there's obviously a delay between when a show airs in the States and when it airs in Australia. So yeah, he was sending me tapes of the show,
Mm,
and yeah, he did Buffy and Angel when it split off to its own show, and
mhm,
then Firefly when it came along. So I got to see them before
mm,
the rest of Australia, I
yeah,
guess.
because that's different now. Shows sort of air here closer to like an American. Well, because a lot of it's on streaming now, so it all airs on like the same day, so everyone watches it, on the same day. And like cable television isn't as popular anymore because of the advent of
Yeah,
streaming.
absolutely. There is, like Game of Thrones is a sort of a worldwide event. When a new episode came out, it was watched all over the world at the same time, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Jack Snyder's director's cut, as an example that's coming to mind, it was released worldwide at the same time on HBO and the various different versions of it in the different countries around the world.
Mm.
So yeah, it was a different time when Firefly was
Mhm.
being released.
Yeah. So I guess sort of what are your like overall like what did you well because I think you were telling me this about off when we weren't recording about how the trailers for Firefly portrayed a very different show
Yeah,
than it actually is, which I
yeah,
haven't seen. I meant to for this, but I wasn't able to. But
yeah. But like I said, a friend of mine was sending the tapes over, so I had never seen the trailers. I
mm,
didn't know anything about the show beyond that it was by Joss Whedon, and I liked his work. And it was Space Cowboys, essentially, which
mm,
just sounds like a lot of fun, and
mm,
it was. So I had no preconceived notions
mm,
of what it was going to be like. But yeah, the trailers after the fact, the trailers that they when I saw them, they did not represent the show very well,
Mm.
and I think that's part of the reason that it didn't do well.
Mm.
The pilot episode was not one we saw, or we didn't see it in order. Um, the first episode we saw was the train job, which, yeah, it feels like an odd episode. I don't know if we want to start talking about specifics about episodes now, but yeah,
Mm.
it's different. It has a different sort of feel to the other episodes, because it was sort of like a second pilot. They knew it was going to air first, so they had to introduce all the characters again in that episode, and they wanted it to be more, action and try and get people watching. It starts with a bar fight, which seems really out of place in that show.
Mm-hmm.
Having after you've watched the whole season. But yeah, so anyway, it was a fun sort of introduction, but it was a lot much lighter than the depth that you usually expect from a
Mm-hmm.
Joss Whedon show. And then as the other episodes came out, you could really see that the character building that
Mm-hmm.
he's well known for.
Yeah. So I don't really know how to, because I don't really do TV shows on here. So like, is there like a specific thing you want to talk about? Like not just like in the show, like specific like characters, or do you want to talk about like the production side of it? Like, what do you want to talk about? Because you know more about this show than I do, and
Sure,
more.
sure. Anything. I think it's a great premise for a show. There's a super smart girl that gets kidnapped by a government organization
Mm-hmm.
in quotes, that are doing things to her. Her brother rescues her, and on the way out, they get caught up with you know, these other characters on this ship that all have their own interesting backstories.
Mm-hmm.
And that's season one, sort of on its way. The Alliance are trying to find River, and
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to stop them from doing that, essentially. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great season. It's
Mm-hmm.
disappointing that there wasn't more of it, but
Yeah.
yeah, it goes along really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it gets tied up well in the movie. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that all would have been like season one,
Mm-hmm.
and then season two would have been something new and different and much more exciting. And we just never got to see that.
Mm. So I think so because I don't know how many people listening to this will have seen it, so I guess we'll preempt spoilers and
Oh
stuff
yeah,
when we get
we
into
recommend you watch the show. It's on Disney
plus.
Plus.
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
Disney.
right? Yeah,
That's
it's
yeah,
because they just bought Fox.
yeah.
So the 14 episodes are on Disney Plus. They're in the right order that you should watch them. So
Mm-hmm.
episode one is the 90-minute pilot, and then yeah, watch them through in that order, and then track down the movie Serenity to see how it all wraps up.
Yeah. So like, mm, there's a lot to talk about with this because because even for a very limited show, for a very small show, it packs so much into every episode that there's considerable amounts to talk about. Like, so do you want to start since you're the guest? Do you want to talk about something?
Sure, yeah. I don't know. You want to try and keep it spoilers free? That's going to make it a bit tricky, I think. That's all.
Well, I mean, if you're going to talk about spoilers, just say that spoilers.
Sure. Um, it's a great first pilot where you get introduced to
Mm-hmm.
Mal. He's in the war. He's a soldier. He's fighting, and he's just about essentially to lose. His side loses at this battle. You see it happen,
Mm.
and he does not take it well. He is very anti-government
Mm.
after that point, and he's trying to, not fight them because you can't fight them, but yeah, just do what he can to be subversive, I guess.
Mm. Stick it to them.
Yeah, try and do what he can. He's a criminal. He's a smuggler sort of thing with your ship, just doing jobs to get by. And yeah, I guess he's sort of a libertarian at that point. He's trying to live without the rules and just do what he needs to survive and keep his little family that he has on his ship alive and going.
Yeah. So I guess this is a good time to talk about the characters because series is primarily the 9 characters on the Serenity ship, which is the name of the ship, and it's a Firefly class ship, hence the name of the show. And so mostly there's the 9 on this ship, but there's also sort of some recurring characters that we meet at various different points.
There's lots of guest stars that come in. There's a lot of fun. In Joss Whedon's first 2 shows, he had Buffy and then he had Angel, and he was very much wanted to not name this show after a character. So he named it after his ship,
Hmm.
just so that any of these people could leave at any time or die. He's a fan of killing off his characters as
Hmm.
well, so he wanted to have that thing of making the stories about the ship and the people that are on it, which they can come
Yeah.
and go and change, which they possibly would have done after season one.
Hmm.
But yeah, there are 9 characters which all come together in the pilot episode. I guess what's 6 of them are on the ship,
Uh,
and then 3 join
yeah.
on that pilot episode as sort of passengers, and they just sort of stay on through the course of
Hmm.
season one.
Yeah, and going back to the naming, because he also created Dollhouse,
That is true.
which is, I think, from what you explained, is basically people who play different parts that become like different. How do you
Yeah, the
describe it?
story, just to go off on a quick tangent, Joss Whedon was having lunch with Eliza Dushku one day and just talking about projects and things they might do.
Mm.
And Eliza was talking about being an actress and how she just takes on all these roles. And Joss Whedon sort of took that and said, I've got an idea about a place
Hmm.
where, yeah, that's exactly what happens. You're a character that lives in there, and you get imprinted with a personality, and you play that part, and they come back and they erase it, and they give you a new one for the next job.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's another fun show.
Hmm. Yeah. So on the ship at the start of the show, there's Mal, Nathan Fillion's character. We've got Zoe, Wash, Jane, and Kaylee, and
Yeah,
Inara.
and Denara. Yeah,
Inara is on the ship as well. So, like, do you just want to go through talk about each character, or
sure, sure. So Zoe, I mean Mel is the captain. He, like we just said, he's the captain of the ship, and he wanted to, uh, you know, live his life outside of Alliance reign, I guess.
Mm,
Zoe fought with him in the war, so she stays with him as sort of second in command. He needs a pilot, so that's Wash. They sign him up. He joins the crew. I mean, there was an episode of where you see them all join. They're all there at the
mm,
start of the show, but there is an episode where you see them all become part of the family, I guess,
yeah.
of Mel's family. Um, he has a mechanic who is not so great at looking after his ship, and Kaylee comes on board, and she is just much better at it, and she gets the job. Jane is the muscle, he's. Well, I don't really know much about his background. They don't really talk about it, but yeah, he's just a big guy that likes shooting guns. So yeah, you
Mm.
need one of those if you're going to be a smuggler. And Anara is a what's the term they use in the show? A
Companion.
companion, yes. So she adds um, what's the word they use? Legitimacy, yeah,
Legitimacy. Yeah.
to them, so that they can get to places. Because she has access to things. She's trained on the core worlds of the system, and
Hmm.
yeah, she can get them to places where they sometimes need to go.
Mm.
And yeah, those are the main 6.
Hmm. Yeah. And so the pilot is sort of it opens. It doesn't take a lot of like the opening of the episode is the war and Mal and Zoe in this war, and then it sort of skips ahead a few years or so.
Yeah, where Mel is captain of the ship, and he
Yeah,
has his crew, and they're doing the jobs.
and there's not a lot of time it spends sort of establishing. Well, it establishes the universe, but it just sort of begins,
Yeah,
and it doesn't because like Buffy or other Whedon shows take time to set up all the characters, set up the story, set up all of this, and they don't do that with Firefly. They
no,
just
that's
sort of
true. They just jump straight in, and away they go. And you sort of learn more about the characters, sort of teased out slowly over time.
hmm,
And then they do have an episode, yeah, in the middle of the season, which, yeah, reveals where they all came from.
yeah,
That of the 6 main characters, the 3 who join, you sort of learn about as they join because
hmm,
they're new and they're new to the crew, so they need to tell their story and where they came from. So the
yeah,
audience sort of learns about them as the crew does.
hmm,
There's Shepherd Book, who's just he's just leaving the Abbey where he's lived for a while. He's just looking to get out in the universe.
yeah,
There is Simon Tam, who's just looking for passage to get to a certain place.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point, it becomes obvious that the Alliance is chasing him.
Mm-hmm.
And they discover that he has been smuggling his sister River, who's been in suspended animation, in the luggage, let's say.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, those 9 characters are the main characters that travel through the rest of the season.
Yeah, and the show also has another character who's only in the first episode because it's revealed that they are a bad guy, essentially.
Yeah,
There's,
on the ship, you mean Dobson
yeah,
on the
yeah,
yeah.
they,
So he joins joins Passage at the same time, but he's working for the Alliance and he's trying to track down. I don't know if he's trying to track down River or if he just stumbles across it and he's just going to turn her in for the money. But yeah,
yeah,
he is short-lived, let's say.
yeah. So do you just want to? So I know we talked about this before I'd finished watching it,
Hmm.
about favorite characters and everything, and I think there's no bad characters. Like in a show like this, there's always a worry of, some of the characters are less interesting or not as good, and they are not as well written. And I would argue that Jane is like the least conflicted or least interesting. Not to say that he's bad, because everyone else has got so much more, has got a lot of depth to them,
Hmm.
that he, like, Harrison, feels a lot more like,
He is very singularly focused, let's say. He's just there to shoot guns and make money, beat up people. That's his driving force. And it's fine. He's, like I say, I'm not going to say one-dimensional, but he's very not as well-rounded as the other characters.
yeah.
But that's okay to have him because, he's there for a bit of comic relief. But he's also there if he's just motivated by money. Is it possible? How much money would it take for him to double cross, the people that he's with? So he's sort of not necessarily a threat, but yeah, he's just someone there that's keeping things interesting. He always votes for the path of least resistance. If that means getting rid of some of these people on the crew, well, that's fine. Let's just get rid of them and move on.
Mm.
Or if there's money to be made by turning in Simon and River, well, let's do that. And you
Yeah.
know, so there's a bit of he's there for conflict as well. There's a bit of conflict between him and Mal as Mal asserts his authority and keeps him in line. But it is true that most of the other characters have a lot more going on.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, you want to talk about that for a bit? Like
Yeah.
Mel sort of he seems simple because he's just anti-alliance and he wants the freedom to do what he wants,
Mm-hmm.
but he also
He's sort of lost because he loses the war and he sort of loses part of himself.
he doesn't know what his place in the world is, which is why he becomes captain of his own ship so he can assert his own rules, and this is how things work. He's military, obviously, so he has a bit of that. He was a sergeant, I think, in the army, and he knows that you know authority in the chain of command and listening, following orders, and giving orders if you to the people that work for you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not as much. Yeah, he's interesting, but I don't think his character evolves very much over the course of the show. We only had one season, of course, so it's not a lot of learning and growing.
Yeah. And you sort of see as well, sort of, how, sort of his opinions on certain things and how he sort of treats certain characters, how he sort of treats, how, the difference in how he treats Simon versus Kaylee or something.
Yeah, exactly right.
Because he sort of very much, he can be a bit harsh at times, and he's not very, like, he makes his, if he has a problem with someone, he makes it known.
Yeah, he is certainly going to speak his mind, but he certainly has a code he lives by. He lives by a code. He's not going to break that code. Um, and so I guess part of it is finding out exactly what his code is. That's part of the journey of Mel.
Yeah, and then you've got Zoe, who's also not as well. I think in the film, which we'll get to a little bit later on, there's a little bit more to her.
Yeah.
That they sort of give to her character, but in the show there isn't a lot. But again, it is a one season TV show, so you can't
You can't
give
tell everybody's story in 14 episodes is all they
yeah
have. And with 9 characters, that's, an episode each, which isn't a lot to,
yeah
as well as trying to drive the season forward. But yeah, Zoe doesn't have. She is, she's, Mel has been a commanding officer for the longest time, I guess, during the war, then on this ship. And she's married to the pilot Wash. And
mm,
so there's a interesting drama and conflict in there about, is she listening to the captain? Is she listening to her husband?
mm,
And they play on that a little bit, which is
mm,
makes for some fun dynamics as
mm.
well.
So I also think it's a sort of because then there's Wash, who I think a lot of people like and would put as their favorite character because he's got the one-liners, he's got the really funny dialogue.
Yeah,
And I think that plays off of Zoe well because she's a lot more serious than he is. He sort of has more fun with things than she does, it seems, in some of their interactions.
yeah. Zoe is very no nonsense, and
Mm,
Wash is constantly having a good time and trying to bring the fun.
yeah.
He's does have a lot of the good dialogue.
hmm Yeah, and in the opening episode, he's playing with dinosaurs. Which sort of establishes his character
Indeed, indeed,
and
and creates some memes that are
yeah,
out there on the internet.
yeah, and as you watch the series and you watch the movies, he's still got the dinosaurs there. Because
Yes.
when I was watching the movie yesterday, I was like, oh, there's the dinosaurs from the very first episode, presumably because he likes them, and then things that he owns.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wonder how much of that is just is like written dialogue for him, and how much of that is Alan Tudyk
Yeah, that's fair enough.
improvisation, because he's very good at that. If you
Yeah,
watch him in interviews and stuff, he's
he's a funny guy.
a very naturally funny person who could make up this dialogue if he wanted to.
Yeah, it's been a little while since I listened to the audio commentaries, but I can't remember them saying anything about how much was scripted or how much was, um, you know, ad libbed on the spot. But yeah, you can certainly see how some of it could have been just spontaneous in the moment
Yeah,
comedy.
and that for movies and TVs can be some of the best lines can just be things that have just improvised and just you the actor comes up with on the spur of the moment. I think that's something that should be encouraged. Improvisation if they're good at it, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
That they should if they can improvise something, they should. But it depends, I guess, on the situation as well.
Yeah, I think that is something in as a show goes on longer and the characters get to know, the actors get to know the characters sort of a bit better than the writers, maybe. And so the writers are working on stuff, and then when it comes to actually shooting the scene, the actor can say, "Well, I know this character because I've played him for a while now,
hmm
or I've played her for a while now," and
Yeah,
you make up lines
yeah,
that are fitting to the character. And
yeah,
obviously, if your show gets cancelled after episode 14, you maybe don't have as much time
yeah,
to know your character as well.
and you told me that in something like Scrubs, the janitor character, they stopped writing dialogue for him. They just had him come up with
Yeah,
funny
yeah.
things.
There's he's famously an incredibly funny man, and they would shoot the dialogue stuff, and then they just keep going and let him just make stuff up. And it got to the point where the writers realized, yeah, we're just not writing anything as funny as the stuff that he is making up.
hmm
So yeah, we'll just leave it all to the actor and let him do it.
Yeah, I think that's what a writer should do. Well, it depends, of course. If someone is coming up with something funnier than like the writers can come up with, then they should maybe just let the actor just do it. They know it well enough, and they are funny enough to keep coming up with inventive and funny jokes.
Yeah, the and obviously the janitor character in Scrubs is not really moving the plot forward, so it doesn't really matter what he says. He doesn't have to have those those story points that he's
hmm
bringing up. He's just there being comic relief, which is
hmm
fine. But obviously, writers can, as long as the story is moving forward in the way they want it to do, the actor can go for his life.
Yeah, and so we touched on Jane before, how he's one of the less complex, I guess.
Yeah,
He's a very sort of cut and dry, very sort of basic
yeah. He has a
character.
driving force. He doesn't hide himself. I've said this before when we were off mic. He's a lot like Cordelia in that he just says what he thinks, and that obviously can bring a lot of comedy because he has no tact and he's just saying whatever's on his mind,
yeah,
which can be some funny stuff.
yeah. And I think I was thinking about this before us how the characters are sort of on a very if you strip them down to very basic elements, they're sort of like stereotypes of other shows. Like you've got sort of the war, like the battle worn leader. You've got like the strong female second in command. You've got like the funny pilot. You've got like sort of muscle.
Yeah,
And you've got
sure,
these,
sure.
and
Definitely a lot of archetypes there.
and you could do that. I think you could do that with any show though. Like if you do that with Buffy, you strip them down to very
Yeah,
basic elements. Then it's the same thing, and you can do it with any film or movie really.
yeah, yeah. There's
Stripping.
obviously a reason these characters work in when they are stereotypical, and so that's where stereotypes come from, I
Yeah.
guess.
So then there's the engineer, the mechanic for
Hmm.
the ship, Kaylee, who you
Kaylee,
said was wonderful.
she is wonderful. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
fantastic. She's right up there as one of my favorites. She's because she loves the ship. She calls it her girl, and
Mm.
she wants to take care of it and keeps it going. And she obviously is this. I think she's the the heart of the family on the ship.
Mm.
Everybody loves Kaylee, even Jane.
Mm.
Even though he teases her and picks on her sometimes, but that's what you do with a little sister, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody loves Kaylee,
Mm.
and quite rightly so. She is in fact wonderful.
Yeah. And in the first episode, the spoilers, gets shot in the first
She
episode.
does, yeah, that's right. When you've got the character that everybody loves, the best way to bring the drama is to put her life in danger, and so that's what they do.
Yeah.
Especially in the first episode of a Joss Whedon show, where she might die. She might
Yeah.
honestly be. This might be it for her.
Yeah, because that is a thing Joss Whedon does, is he kills off characters.
Killing off characters
And
is a way
you
to
were
bring the
telling
drama.
me a story where he did rewrites for Speed, was it?
Yeah, that's right. In spoilers for Speed, I guess there was a character in the show, in the movie, that gets killed off by the psycho killer, psycho bomb guy. And Joss Whedon came in to rewrite, and the character was mean and nasty and a jerk and what have you. And then he rewrote them to make him, funny and lovable and a character that's liked. And the studio's going, "Well, what are you doing? You can't kill him now." And Joss was like, "No, no, now is when you should kill him. You don't want to kill someone. There's no payoff for killing someone that everybody hates.
Yeah.
You want the drama. You've got to kill someone that everybody loves."
Yeah. And that's why, like, in Game of Thrones, sort of the early days where they were just killing off all the fan favorites, everyone was, like, sad, but also, like, this is good, and they would come back to watch the next episode.
Yeah, I had not read the books when I watched season 1 of Game of Thrones, and spoilers, Ed Stark dies at the end of season 1, and I did not see that coming. I got to tell you, it was brutal.
But it is Sean Bean, and he does die.
He dies very well. Yeah, bless him.
He does in everything. But, he makes a good living off it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure people want to see him and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's the whole of season 1 of Game of Thrones. He's, following these breadcrumbs and working out the mystery of what's going on. And then when he does it, he dies and they kill him off. It's like, I thought it was going to be, sort of his show as he carried on, but nope, he's done for.
Yeah, and I think that's something Joss Whedon is very good at in terms of writing, is making you love these characters and then killing them off, because that's sort of it means more and there's more emotional impact of a character you love to watch dying, as opposed to someone you don't like watching dying, because then you're just like, well, good, they're gone now. I don't have to worry about this character again because I didn't like them.
Yes, Jenny Calendar in Buffy, for example. Everyone loves Jenny Calendar. Giles loves Jenny Calendar. So yeah, let's kill her, because it's obviously upsetting for the people watching, and it's obviously very upsetting for Giles. And there's obviously great drama and content to be found there.
Yeah, and so then there's Zanara, the companion, which I guess that we haven't really explained what a companion is.
Yeah, she's an escort. But it's more than that. They call her the ambassador because she has, in this world, the top end prostitutes, I guess, for want of a better word, are actually very, very highly regarded, and they have all the power of who they get to see and what have you. And they go through all this training, and they get recertified every 12 months or few years, something like that. And so she rents a shuttle off the Firefly, off Mel, and it just becomes hers. She lives in there. She decorates it how she wants, and she uses it to fly off to see her clients.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she is someone who sort of on the ship, but sort of apart from it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the relationship she has with Mal is, sort of antagonistic, but obviously, they still really care for each other.
Yeah. I think it's more that he doesn't necessarily appreciate her profession. He appreciates her, but he doesn't appreciate the profession that she does.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's that. Like, I don't know if he, would judge someone for doing that.
But he does repeatedly call her a
He
whore.
does, yeah. He absolutely. And again, I don't know if that's just hiding his feelings behind antagonism and that sort of thing. Um, but yeah, he obviously cares about her a lot. They, spoilers, going to rescue her sort of in the movie,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
even though she was not in any need of being
Yeah.
rescued. There was comedy there to be found
Yeah.
there.
And there's a line in the movie that I wanted to bring up before I forget, where she calls them, because at the end of the first season of Firefly, she leaves because she's, not, it's not great, and she leaves. And so then she calls them in the film, and she's talking to him, and she wants to see him or something, or she like,
Mm-hmm.
and so then there's a bit where they're talking, and I think it's Kaylee who sort of brings up that like, she is like, well, maybe she just wants to see you, and then Mal says, did you hear us argue? And they're like, no, and he's like, well, then it's a trap or something. I'm like, that's really sad. Like that like the only way that something's genuine is if they're arguing with each other.
Yeah, they've had that sort of a relationship where they're just constantly bickering.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, but yeah, it was a nice reveal, I guess, in that moment. That this is how we know it's a trap.
Mm.
But yeah,
Mm. And so then that's the crew that are on the ship when the show starts, and then we meet the new people. We've got Shepherd Book, who is not in it enough. I think he's an interesting character who isn't in it as enough. I don't think there's as much with him as there maybe should be.
yeah.
Like,
There's fun reveal. He's a shepherd. Which is like a priest, I guess. Um, and he's out there. There's another great scene at their first dinner where he says, "Do you mind if I say grace?" And Mel says, "As long as you don't say it out loud." Because Mel was very much a non-believer since I think he might have been a believer
I
beforehand, but
think
after
in
the
the
war,
opening scene, he's got like a cross or something. He's
yeah,
got
in the war,
and in the war, and then
he loses his faith when they
because he
lose the
lost the
war, sort of
war.
thing.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and so yeah, he comes in as a shepherd, and then there's just a few things in there where he knows how to use a gun and he knows how to do some stuff, and it's like he's obviously got a more interesting past than we know about.
Mm-hmm.
So, which
Yeah.
is more stuff to be revealed.
Yeah.
Not that we get too much of it before the show ends, I guess.
And there's a few scenes in the show where he's with Jane, and they're just like working out together on the ship. I just find that like that's very interesting and very like a weird pairing.
Sure.
Because the show, there's sort of like the primary pairings of characters. There's Wash and Zoe, and then there's Simon and River, and then there's sort of just every now and again you'll just get like an odd pairing of just two like random people together.
Yeah.
Just talking.
Yeah, because in those strange combinations you get some interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing that Buffy does and Angel does of there's the primary pairings, and then there's just the odd pairings of just two like random characters like Spike and Anya, for example. In Buffy, very different pairing, two very different people, but they have chemistry and they sort of bounce off each other.
Yeah, there's a great scene in Buffy where Spike is in there with Joyce, and they're talking, and they're like, have we met?" And yeah, Joyce has smacked him with an axe at some point earlier in the show's history because he was attacking Buffy. So yeah, and then you just have like you have an interesting combination like that.
And I think none of the pairings of characters feels weird or disingenuous. Like it all feels like these are genuine people who know and like each other. Well, in most cases, they like each other, and it doesn't feel unearned. It feels like genuine emotions and relationships between these characters, even in situations where they don't like each other.
Yeah.
It feels like these are real people.
Yes. I think there's something about traveling small group of people in a confined space like a
Mm-hmm.
ship. Yeah, you're going to get to know them,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even if you don't like them all, you're going to maybe respect them or
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's going to be some interesting conversations when these people meet and talk that necessarily wouldn't have out in the real
Mm-hmm.
world.
Yeah. And then we get to Simon and River, which I think Simon is one of my favorite characters of the show. I think
Oh, that's excellent.
he because he's sort of the most restrained of all the characters. Like everybody, like he's the most pulled back. If you look at them all, they're all making jokes and they're all doing these things, and the relationship and moments he has with Kaylee, where she's sort of more open and having fun, and he's sort of very pulled back and
Yeah.
very
He's a
proper.
doctor. He has medical training. He's from a wealthy society, so he
Mm.
doesn't fit in as well
Yeah.
with this, I guess, lowbrow crew.
Mm.
So he's sort of seen a bit, and Anara to a lesser degree is like that as well because of her training and things like that. So they sort of have a connection.
Yeah.
Um, they have a common past or common not history, but they come from the same place. They come from wealth and well-to-do and
Hmm.
society.
Yeah, and I think because they don't have many scenes, but I think some of their scenes are really nice together. Like there's an episode like right towards the end where they're where there's this woman giving birth, and because Simon's the doctor, he has to deal with her, and he has to help her give birth, and like and I just wishes him good luck. I'm like, that's really nice because it feels genuine.
Yeah,
It doesn't feel like it's just having like a nice emotional moment. It's like this is like feels like real people who care for each other and are
yeah,
wishing each other good luck.
yeah. All those sort of nice moments have been earned during the course of the show,
Yeah.
where you see them interact and you see them get together. And yeah, it's interesting that you like his character because it is so restrained and so
Mm.
underplayed. He's very much the straight man for everyone else
Yeah.
who's sort of being the comedian.
Hmm.
Which is great because that's not necessarily, like you say, Wash is a lot of everybody's favorites because he's out there and just funny.
Yeah.
And it's good that the straight man gets some recognition.
But I think it's because he sort of progressed. Because when we first introduced him, he's wearing like a suit. He's got a full suit on. He's wearing like sunglasses and everything. And as you sort of watch the series progress, he sort of loses bits of that, and he's not as you know
Yeah, the edges get roughed up a bit. He's not as smooth
yeah.
and what have you.
And then by the time the film ends, he's also sort of lost a bit of that.
Yeah,
And I think and I think it's good because it could be one of the harder roles to play, perhaps, is the straight man. Because if everyone else is just having fun and you've got to be very restrained and
yeah,
very much like. Because even like Book he has like more fun, even though he's like a shepherd, like he's a priest.
mm,
But there's a lot more to him and he has a little more fun than Simon does because of who he is and everything.
yeah. He's got that age as well.
Yeah.
Both as as the character and as an actor. He's obviously Ron Glass played the character. He's lived a long time and he's done a lot of things, and he brings that sort of history with him.
Hmm.
That he's got a lot of stuff to say about the world and his the way he's walked through it. And so
Mm.
you want to listen to this guy talk a bit.
Yeah. I think in a lot of stuff, some of my favorite characters are just like the straight men. The sort of the guys who are and women, who is very much they're the least interesting.
Mm.
And then as you watch a TV show or whatever, you can see them progress into more, loosening up and like losing that old part of themselves. So if you go back and watch it from the beginning, you're like, man, this is so different than how they end up by the end of the series.
Yeah, there's Xander in Buffy. Just to go off on a quick tangent, is obviously it's very much sort of the straight man. I mean, he's sort of funny, but
Mm.
he's the only one with no power. He's like just a human
Yeah, he's
in that
just the
show. He's
only
just a
guy.
kid. And then he has an episode in season 3 called the Zeppo, which is just a great episode
Hmm.
of him. Like it's sort of a night in the world where all these crazy things are happening, and it's sort of seen through his eyes and his experiences. And it's a great episode of
Yeah,
television.
because if you look at that, Buffy, to go on a quick tangent about that, because you've got Buffy, who's the Slayer, you've got Willow, who's like the tech genius and becomes a witch, you've got Giles, who has got his dubious past,
Mm,
then there's Oz, who's a werewolf, then you've got Anya at some point, she's a former demon, you've
yep.
got Spike, who's a vampire, you've got Tara, who's a witch as well, and then he's just like this guy who
Yeah.
doesn't have any of that.
Yeah.
and I think he, as a character, is one of the more important ones because he's sort of the one. There's a great moment in the first episode of season 4 where Buffy sort of lost everything. She's lost the fight, she's hurt and everything, and he just like because he I is described because the buff because Xander, Willow, and Giles are talked about as like her. They represent, Giles represents her mind, Xander represents her like heart, and like Willow represents her soul or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so how like Xander comes through for her and tells her that like she's his hero, and how he always whenever he's scared or alone, he thinks about what would Buffy do, and I think that's just nice because you need someone to be grounded in reality in a show like this, and Simon in this is very much grounded in reality,
Yeah,
despite
absolutely.
the fact that his sister is one of the more interesting characters because she's very, I think, to sort of segue to talking about River, it's perhaps the most difficult performance to get right because
River?
of River, yeah,
Sure.
because she's the most sort of out there. She's got like I think the performance really works. I don't think if it was as well done as it is, it wouldn't have worked, and her character wouldn't have worked as well
Yeah,
if
yeah.
Summer Glau hadn't given a better performance.
Sure,
So,
sure. Um, well, do you want to just talk about River now?
yeah.
The last character she's revealed, yeah, like I said earlier, being smuggled in Simon's luggage.
Hmm.
She was in suspended animation, and he was just trying to get her away from where he broke her out. And I guess, sorry, just to go back to Simon a bit,
Yeah.
he has that thing where he gave up everything that he had to break his sister out of this facility. And he had all this planning and things he had to do, which obviously shows that he's obviously smart. He's a doctor, but he's also sneaky and conniving and wily. And at some points in the first episode, as you've said, spoilers, Kaylee gets shot, and he's willing to let Kaylee die, uh, or he says, "I'm not going to operate on Kaylee and fix her unless you start flying away from the Alliance who are trying to capture us now." So he's willing to sacrifice Kaylee to save his sister.
Yeah.
And that shows a certain sort of a character as well. So yeah,
and that's an interesting thing because because then you watch the series and Kaylee and Simon's relationship and how it developed over the series, how it's
he's a very good looking man. There's no doubt about it. Yes.
Yeah, and she's very pretty as well.
She is just lovely. Yes, yeah, absolutely.
But I'm sure we'll talk about that when
we will. So, and then the last character is River, who gets revealed. She is this child prodigy, a genius.
How old are they meant to be? Like, how old is she meant to be? Because we see a flashback with them as like kids. And I presume he's older than her.
Yes.
But she is like a prodigy. She's a genius.
Yeah, she was taken to this institute or sent to this institute when she was very young, and then they started testing her and operating on her and doing all sorts of things to turn her into this. I guess a weapon is one way they
that's
put
basically
it.
And
it's a bit like Black Widow sort of story where they're just taking this institute.
But I think it's a little more. It's different because it's not the same thing. It's a bit as a premise. It's sort of the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think there's a difference in the two of them.
Yeah.
I think and it's a much bigger part of the film, really, like because they're just trapped because Simon and River are traveling to escape the Alliance, but the film really delves into like the past and there's several flashbacks.
Sort of thing. Obviously, they were going to expand over the several seasons of the show, but the show didn't get that chance.
And I assume in the comics there's more involving her past in the comics.
There's a little bit, not as much. Most of it's from after she gets picked up, I guess, after she's with the Serenity family. So, but yeah, there's more in the movie. But and then essentially it becomes Simon who's rescued his sister from the Alliance, and they're just trying to get away. And Mal, while he's doesn't like people doing bad things and smuggling on his ship, he is a big fan of not giving the Alliance what they want. So he sort of takes them on board, and they stay with him. Well, through the show and the movies, the movie. So, her character is, she is a genius, she's been affected at this institute. We don't exactly know how or to what extent,
Mm.
but she is, yeah, an interesting character that we learn more about, I guess, who is
Mm-hmm.
yeah, trying to, I don't know, not make a way in the world, but the first season is really just about escaping from the Alliance. They have
Yeah.
some episodes where they go back and they have to do some brain scans and stuff. So they go to
Yeah.
a hospital, have to break into a hospital
Yeah.
and get some things done. There's
Mm-hmm.
lots of stuff that happens where they try and find exactly what's been happening. And I guess, yeah, it's resolved in the movie.
Yeah. So we don't have time to talk about every episode because
No, we don't.
that's got
I mean, we do,
I mean,
but
we
yeah,
do, but
who wants to listen to
that's like going to be several hours.
that? Yes, indeed.
So I'm just going to touch on some points. So the show takes place like about 100 or so years into the
Yeah, I
future.
can't remember. I didn't look it up, but yeah,
But
sometime in the future.
but yeah, so technology hasn't like they still use like modern guns most of the time. Like it's a lot of modern technology.
Yeah, in the center planets, there's a lot of, I think, futuristic stuff that, whatever's happened in the next 100 years. But we don't spend a lot of time there in the show. We're on the outer planets where they, yeah, just take people out, and they're just out there farming and trying
Mm-hmm.
to terraform these planets and
Yeah.
live. So it's a interesting mix of flying spaceships and hand plows and things like that, where they're just trying to get by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So towards the end of the first episode, we hear about the Reavers,
Yes.
and they are not really featured in the show in the show anyway, outside of that first episode.
No, again, there's probably a lot more they were going to say during the time over the next several seasons, but we didn't get that far. So
Mm.
they're just there as this boogeyman threat kind of a
Mm.
thing, which they run into every now and again. But
And
not
I
that often.
like how because we don't really know what they are, and so and because a lot of the show we're sort of we're from Simon's point of view because he doesn't know what some of these things are.
Sure.
So
But people don't actually know what they are either. They're
Yeah.
just people that have gone crazy, but for some reason,
and of killing and raping and
yeah,
murdering
it
and
seems
all
to
these-
be. I don't know why these people sort of make more of their own kind by just through their actions and things like that.
Yeah.
It's not explained.
Yeah.
Well, it's the mystery that they're not only trying to solve it, but yeah, they do. That's
kind
the
of what
central part of the movie.
the movie, yeah.
Mm.
And I like how immediately, like, it's obvious they are a threat. Like when they're like, oh, there are Reavers on us. Like Wash and all the characters get immediately are like
including
incredible.
Jane, who just loved shooting people and what have you. And he wants nothing to do with them at all.
Yeah, and so there's a great chase sequence where they're able to successfully evade, and then we don't really see them again for the rest of the show. It's pretty much just like other miscellaneous people who are the antagonists for each episode.
Yeah, I mean there is an episode with the Reavers that explains a little bit more about them, but that's really it. They're not there as a big part.
They're more of the main antagonists. Well, in the sort of the latter half of the film, they're more of the antagonists there.
Yes.
I think the CGI holds up most of the time.
Yeah, I mean it's early 2000s, I guess.
But a lot of it holds up relatively well.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, they didn't go overboard with it. Like a lot of the stuff, like they're using a lot of old tech. Obviously, like I said, there's this flying spaceship, but they've also just got handguns and things like that, and all that stuff exists, so they could do it for real. When in shooting.
Yeah.
There's an interesting part in the audio commentary where they're just talking about the filming style of the show in the CGI, and they have a lot of like crash zooms and finding focus of stuff, like a sort of a documentary style that Joss wanted to use. And then apparently George Lucas used it in the new Star Wars movies, which came out just before the show aired, and sort of stole his thunder. But it's not motivated in the Star Wars movies, or it's more motivated in Firefly, because it seems like a sort of a documentary sort of show where you're following these characters and stuff.
Yeah. So it's also got a really good theme. Like a theme song for the show, for the opening credits, because I think it's something that Joss Whedon is really good at.
Yeah,
because I don't really know. Like, did he write the theme? Or
I think so, or his brother did. I think there's a.
Because I know for Buffy, he didn't come up with the theme for that. It was Alison Hannigan who had him listen to it. And he was like, "Oh, that's great. We should use that."
Yeah, and then in Angel, I think they did the same thing. They just put a call out to a lot of bands and say, send us some songs that you think might be good
Yeah.
for a theme song. And so that's how they got those two.
Yeah, but this is the only one, because does Dollhouse have lyrics in its game,
I
or
am
is it just
not sure.
music?
It's been a little while since I've watched the
Yeah, but
Dollhouse.
because Buffy and Angel, it's just like music, but there's actual lyrics
Mm,
in the Firefly theme.
there is.
And I think it's a really good song for a TV show.
Sure.
And I think
It does seem to sum up what the show,
yeah,
the feel of the show. So it gives you an idea of the feel of the show.
yeah. So, do you have any like favorite moments or scenes or episodes that you want to touch on?
Probably too many to name. There's lots of great lines
There
used
are
in the show.
plenty. There are a lot of really great lines.
Most of them exist as memes on the internet now.
Yes.
Favorite episodes? They're all no, they're not all really good. Train Job is probably the weakest. I'm going to go with that, but the rest of them are all really good. I love Out of Gas. It's just a great idea for a show where they're just leaking oxygen and how they're going to live without oxygen. And now Mrs. Reynolds introduces a great side character who comes back really once or twice. She's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And the final episode with the bounty hunter.
That's
also a lot of fun.
Really
but I guess my favorite is the pilot. I'm a big fan of first episodes because I don't think you get a second episode unless the first episode's pretty strong.
That's just how you look at movies in general.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like Empire Strikes Back better than Star Wars.
Yes.
But I think
myself included.
But I think if you watch if Empire was your first movie you watched and you'd never seen the Star Wars,
it definitely doesn't work.
It wouldn't be as good a movie. It's built on A New Hope.
But
so
then,
that's why I prefer A New Hope.
But then, sort of by that logic, should the first season not be your favorite of a TV show then?
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I mean, the first...
Because I think, sort of by that logic, that sort of... I mean, I don't know how it works, because I know, like, for Buffy, your favorite season isn't season 1. I don't think it's favorite for everyone. It's one of the weaker seasons.
Yeah, well, it was just 12 episodes of a fill-in show that they made, and each... Pretty much each episode is its own story, movie of the week, monster of the week.
Yeah.
But there's obviously a lot of character building in the first season. And even in the first episode, Welcome to the Hellmouth and The Harvest is a great double episode to introduce the show. And introduce a lot of characters and start a lot of stories, start a lot of journeys.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say the pilot of of Firefly is probably one of my favorites. Got a great introduction, I think, to most of the characters. River's introduction is amazing.
It's because I've got a list of TV show pilots ranked, and I think it's because I like ranking things. So
absolutely.
It's fun. And so I need to see where I put Serenity, because I actually watched Serenity earlier this year, like February or something, and I only finished the show like a couple of days ago.
Sure.
But I watched it in
That's
3
Serenity,
days.
which is the name of the pilot episode.
That's the pilot episode, yeah.
Which is also the name of the movie, just to separate it.
Which I think makes sense. I think the pilot of an episode, like the name of a pilot, should have... I mean, a lot of times they just call it the pilot. It makes sense. Like that, if you can't come up with... If there's not... if you don't have a good name or anything, or it doesn't necessarily need to have a good name. Like Breaking Bad has a great pilot, and they just call it pilot.
Sure.
Which makes sense, because I don't think you need to, I don't think, some TV shows just go, episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, they don't have anything else. And I think it depends. I mean, I don't really mind what they call it. It just can be difficult if you name an episode just episode 2.1, and then it's like, well, I can't exactly remember that off the top of my head, what episode is.
Yeah.
Like with Buffy, it's, each episode is individual name.
Yeah, the title is telling you what the story's about.
Serenity is my 3rd favorite TV show pilot.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's Breaking Bad is above it.
Breaking Bad and the first episode of The Boys are above it.
Okay, sure.
And I've got and this list has got 45 TV show pilots, so that's pretty good.
3 out of 45.
Yeah. And there's a lot of other really good pilots on it, like Angel. I think has got a much better pilot than Buffy.
Sure.
Because it's established with Angel, the character.
Yeah, that's right. You can do a lot of stuff without having to introduce who Angel and Cordelia is.
So my favorite episode is Out of Gas, the one where everyone, the ship is losing oxygen.
Sure.
I think
is that the episode where you find their backstories and how they join the ship?
Yes, that's the one where they find, because it opens on Simon's birthday, doesn't it? It opens on Is it? I think that's
Oh,
the
on the ship. Yeah,
yeah, on
they're
the
all.
ship.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so they're celebrating Simon's birthday, and then there's an explosion, and then they all have to leave, and then there's just Mal on the ship by
Yeah.
himself. And I think that is Nathan Fillion's best performance of the series
Yeah.
as a whole, because it's just him for a lot of it. It's just him having to perform, and that's some of the best episodes of the TV show, are just the ones where it's just like one or two people just bouncing off each other.
Sure.
You know, because like you need good actors to do that. I think Nathan Fillion is a good actor. And I think, and it's just, and I'm a bit of a sucker for an episode of a TV show where you see how all these people met.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah,
Like,
no, me too. Me too.
I'm trying to think of like other ones off the top of my head that I like of TV shows where there's an episode that's just like a backstory episode. Like, I guess the first, like, Becoming Part 1 of Buffy's got a little bit of backstory, like with Angel and Buffy and how they met.
Yeah.
But it's just those two characters. But this show, like, introduces all the characters, and it all makes sense how you meet them all. Well, the ones that are on the ship.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, see how
Shepard
books. Yeah, exactly right. We'll see how they joined. But
Yeah.
they're no, it is a good episode, like you say, for all those reasons.
Yeah. So I think, like, because there's always, when you talk about a show like this, people always talk about, favorite, like, pairings of characters and favorite interactions and stuff. And I don't think there's a bad pairing. I think in some shows there's, you could have, like, a pairing of characters that is just, like, bad.
Yeah.
But this show, like, feels like people. They feel like people.
Yeah, they're all people that have something interesting to say.
And the emotional moments feel earned. It doesn't feel like Joss or whoever's writing is like telling you this is how you're meant to feel. It feels like this moment is earned, that they've been building for this and now it's happened.
Yeah. They've got a great way, like you say, the new characters come on, so we learn about the crew through their eyes because they're meeting them for the first time. And River very much has this childlike, exploration. Yeah, everything is not new, but everything is fascinating to her. So there's great stuff as she through her journey as well through the show.
And like Mal and River are very much, because a lot of the time of the show he's very antagonistic towards Simon and River. And to be fair, I can see where he's coming from. Like, River is a bit dangerous and somewhat of a liability at times. But you sort of see that he does respect her, at least as a minimum. And as the series progresses and by the end of the film,
it's them. They're the final scene, right? They're on
the deck flying and getting ready to fly the ship.
Yeah.
And so, and I think Jane has also got some of the funnier lines. But the thing about it is he's not trying to be funny, though. He's just saying that, like, Alan Tudyk Wash is trying to be funny.
Yeah.
Well, not trying, but he just is saying things that are funny, but Jane is just saying things that are funny, but not purposely so.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that sort of worked well, to sort of have a less intelligent character, I guess, because they in stuff like this can have some of the funnier lines, but it's not necessarily meant to be funny. It's not like a funny thing they're saying. It's just how they
them saying it is funny.
Yeah. And I feel like the show really, it makes you want to see characters it makes you want to see Kaylee and Simon get together by the end.
Yeah, that's well earned.
And I think that it works because you sort of see there's early stuff in the early on where it sort of is going there, and then Simon sort of pulls back and he's trying to be proper, and then she's upset at him, and you're just like, well, he just needs to stop doing that because he's pushing her away almost, but she's still interested.
Yeah,
because
they're obviously teasing that out.
Yeah,
the will they won't they part of the show to keep people watching a bit.
I think that can be, if it's not well written, can be very annoying and just like, oh, we get it. Just they're gonna get together, but it's just like when it's like in Friends. As much as I like Friends, I found the Ross Rachel thing just like I
by the end.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want them to get together because honestly, they're really bad for each other. She's really bad for him, and he's really bad for her. But it's like, just if you're gonna get together, just do it. Like, and I know that, like, and I think because the show sort of ends sort of with loose threads, and it's just like, well, that's just disappointing because I'm like, they should wrap this up in the film. Like, this should be
Yeah,
how the film
which they
wraps
were
up.
lucky enough to get that happening. I mean,
Yeah,
the show could have ended and that could have been it.
yeah,
But they had a huge fan base
yeah.
who got together and convinced them
Hmm.
to make the movie, which is a bit sort of the opposite of Buffy, where they had the bad movie first and then they
Yeah.
went on to make the TV
But
show.
there is a difference though in that Buffy was watched by well, first of all, the studio understood what Buffy was meant to be, but they didn't get Firefly. They didn't get why the
No,
whole thing.
yeah, no, they marketed it wrong. They
Mm.
got the wrong people watching, and then the wrong people didn't want to watch anymore because it wasn't for them. It wasn't
And
made for them.
they it seems like they purposely sabotaged.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't. Yeah, they just maybe they were just incompetent and bad at their jobs.
mm. But like,
Like I said earlier, I think the train job was, embellic of the show that they wanted to be making every week, and that was not the show Joss was making. So
mhm.
you weren't going to keep the people watching
Yeah,
that.
yeah, like because I think Buffy could have gone as long as they wanted. Honestly, I feel like they still. I mean, I feel like they would have stopped at a certain point, but I feel like they still could have been going for as long as they wanted. And I think Angel was cancelled before season 6 happened.
Yeah,
But I think had it not been cancelled again, they could have kept going.
yeah. There is no end of stories.
But Firefly, they didn't get. So I feel like, but Firefly is a show that's got so much longevity to it
Yeah, absolutely.
because it's very simple. It's just people on a spaceship and they go from planet to planet
Yeah,
doing missions and stuff.
yeah,
Like it's very simple. It's like The Mandalorian is very much like you could do that show for a long time because it's just a guy going from place to place doing missions and stuff.
absolutely. If Firefly had been created today,
I
it's
think
possibly it would be cancelled for a start because that's not how streaming services work. You'd have your first season totally
mm,
done, and you'd get a couple more out of it without any drama.
mhm,
I would think.
yeah. And there's comparisons between Firefly and The Mandalorian because I think it's a sci-fi fit as a sci-fi story with people who just go from planet to planet doing missions and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's not really fair to compare because The Mandalorian is just one guy with a child, and every now and again he's got some people who help him.
Yeah.
But Firefly is like a family essentially of people who
Yeah.
go from place to place doing these missions.
A lot more stories to tell of the people on the ship.
Yeah.
And I think it had a lot more interesting. Like you said, Mandalorian is a guy with a baby and or a child, I guess, and
Mhm.
that's the story. And Firefly had a lot more of overarching. What's the Alliance doing, and how are we going to stop them, and what's
Yeah.
the story with Reavers, and
Mhm.
etc.
Yeah.
etc. Lots of things which could have been filled
Yeah.
in a lot of good television.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think there's a bad episode of Firefly. I think there's some definitely weaker ones, but I think it's like a pretty consistently good show.
It is, yeah. It's there's not a I like there's only 14 episodes, so you want to, I guess, watch as much of it as you can. But there's never a time where you're going, if I'm watching it, I'm going to skip that episode and I'll just go on to the next one because there's good stuff in all of them.
Yeah. So I was just reading something here about when Joss Whedon first created the show, and it says here that he intended to have the show run for 7 seasons.
There you go.
Which
That would
is
have been great.
which like is fair enough. Like it's a show you can do for like as long as you want, really.
Yeah. I wonder how much of that has made it into the comic
Mm.
version.
Because I assume Joss Whedon will not be as heavily involved with it now because of what we know about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much is in there. He was because we were talking about there weren't a lot of comics about it when it first came out, and he said because there's just not as much history. Like Buffy can have multiple seasons of comics because we have 7 years worth of television and lore that we've created.
Yeah. Well, with Firefly, you don't have that.
Yeah, Firefly had none of that.
14 episodes of television, and that's all you've got to work with.
A few episodes of television, don't have a lot to draw a comic book series from. But just recently, like I said, Boom Studios in 2018 started Publish It monthly,
Mm.
And they just essentially started using the characters we like and creating their own lore, creating their own stories,
Mm.
introducing new characters that we like. And yeah, they've been running with it for 3 years now.
Mm.
And I don't know if they're going to be stopping anytime soon.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So it says here that while there were low ratings, which helped
of course, it's all about
cancel
money,
it,
and that's fair enough. It's a
but
business.
also apparently part of the reason it was also cancelled was that the executives at Fox thought it was too dark,
Sure.
which I think it can be to a point that there are several references to like very like dark subject matter.
There is, I mean, they get captured and tortured at some point in
Yeah.
there, and the Reavers themselves are not pleasant
Mm.
things to be encountering.
Mm.
But and like I don't know how much was explained
Mm.
of the show when Joss had meetings with them to
Yeah.
say this is what we're going to be doing. But yeah,
Yeah.
and again, it was early 2000s, that sort of stuff. You can certainly get away with now, especially on streaming services where you can do whatever you
Mm.
want.
Yeah. So before we talk about the film, because I think we've talked about the show enough,
Sure.
there's a lot. They speak Chinese in it.
Yeah, that's part of the law where 100 years in the future, and the USA and China have become the two main influences on the world, which is a reasonable prediction. I think that's certainly what might be happening.
Mhm.
And so they got merged into one,
Mm.
and that's so there's a lot of talking in English and throwing some Chinese in there,
Yeah.
and there's lots of
Yeah.
Chinese advertising and stuff.
Yeah. I wonder, like, I assume it's probably all, like, what they're saying is actual Chinese words, and it actually is.
Yeah. I've listened to the audio commentary with the script writers. They just write a line they want to say, and they just put in brackets in Chinese, and they would have a in Mandarin, I guess, and they would just have a translator come in and give them the syllables that the actors needed to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I also think that, like, the show, because, yeah, we've been talking about this for over an hour now at the time. I think that, like, well, because with Joss Whedon with his writing, and because I was watching a video of this guy who's doing Firefly, like retrospect, like he's doing an episode guide.
Sure.
Basically, he goes through the episode, talks about it, talks about hidden meanings and how Joss Whedon names his characters very purposely,
Sure.
and the names all mean something. Like he doesn't just name them willy nilly. Like every name he gives his characters is in reference to something.
Sure. Yeah, he does a lot of world building. He makes them real, makes the world lived in, and puts them in it.
Which I think is fair enough, and I think it, because I don't pick up on all of that stuff because I don't, like when I first watch something, I don't always pick up all the hidden meanings. If there's like lots to pick up on, I'm just like pick up on all
following the story
because like I primarily want to follow the story first and then pick up stuff, and I think that's something that some movies and shows sort of don't understand is they try and put hidden meaning into everything, but they don't write a compelling story.
Yeah,
and I think it should be an entertaining story first, and then add more to it. You start with this, and then you just add more stuff to it.
Yeah.
So that's the show. Is there any things you want to talk about? Final things you want to talk about in the show before we move on to the movie?
Just gone too early, but yeah, we've said that a few times.
So do you want to put a rating on it out of 10?
I would give it 10. 10 out of 10, I think, for the show.
I think, well, we're in agreement there. It is I mean, it's more of a 9.5, but I'll just say 10 to round it, because that'll just be easier.
Sure. I mean, I don't, I've spoken off camera, but I can't really put a rating on things. It's hard to quantify a number. So, if it's really good, it's a 10, and it's really good. So that's what we have.
And how would you rate this amongst Joss Whedon's other shows, Buffy, Angel, and Dollhouse?
Which would I prefer to watch, you ask?
Like, how would you rank them from sort of, not your least favorite, but like, because you like them all.
I do like them all.
But like, what is do you think is like his best work, and then what do you think is his weakest work?
Wow, that's tricky.
Not to say it's bad, but
sure. I mean, Buffy is obviously really good, but you got 144 episodes, so some of those are going to be weaker.
Yeah.
than some of.
I guess as an overall thing, like which
It's
would
an
you?
overall thing. I like Firefly because
Mhm,
it's 14 episodes in a movie. I mean, there's comics as well, but you can watch it and experience all of the world that exists in a
mhm,
reasonably short amount of time. Buffy and Angel have a lot more time to go through.
mhm.
If you want to say, I'm going to sit down and watch Buffy today, well, then it's obviously going to take you quite a while to get all the way through it. Dollhouse is obviously only 2 seasons too, so that's a bit
Mhm.
quicker. But I find Firefly, Space Cowboys, I think that's just a lot of fun. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
Firefly's way up there.
So now it's time to talk about the film
Sure.
Serenity. So do you know how they? Because you mentioned earlier that Firefly had a massive fan base by the time the film came out, and sort of after the show aired, it sort of it's a cult favorite. It's a cult classic among television, and they made a film because the fans wanted
Yeah, I guess
it.
they. I'm not exactly sure on the specifics of it all, but the people at is it 20th Century Fox? I'm assuming
I
because it's a
think
Fox
so.
show.
Yeah, I
So
think
they
they.
decided it would be worth making a movie out of it. We're going to make some money.
Hmm.
So that's, I'm guessing, what it came down to. There's
Hmm.
obviously lots of people writing in and gaining interest.
Hmm.
And so the producers decided it'd be worth spending the money to make more of that money.
Hmm. So, and you saw it when it came out in cinemas.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
Because I was a huge fan of the show, obviously.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, we went to see it. Yeah, on the big screen when it
yeah.
first came out.
And so one of my sisters has seen it, has seen Firefly and Serenity,
Yes,
and the other one has only seen Serenity.
yes, of your older sisters.
Yes, my
Yes.
older sisters. I don't know how that it happened.
Yeah, well, because Serenity is obviously a movie. You go to the movies, you watch movies. I think she's watched it not on the big screen though. She watched it on
Mhm.
video or something rather. She's pretty sure she came. We were watching it over here, and she saw it over at our house when she came to visit one time.
Right,
Had never seen the show.
right.
Yeah, that's obviously not the ideal way to watch it.
Mhm.
Watch the series TV show first, and then watch
And
the movie.
yeah, I mean that's what you do in most cases. Watch
Yes,
like Breaking Bad. There's the Breaking Bad movie. You watch the show and then you watch the movie. You're also meant to watch the prequel series after you watch the main show.
sure,
That's how you're meant to watch it.
sure.
And that's what you do in most. Indiana Jones, like, has a prequel, but you don't have to watch that
Mm.
in order, because that's a sort of separate thing. It's sort of, each movie is an individual
It
journey,
is. There is
adventure.
nothing spoiled by watching any of the Indiana Jones
Yeah.
movies before the others.
So it opens with Simon rescuing River from the place.
Yes, they go back in time, and we see the breakout.
Yeah. And I was sort of wondering when it took place, like, because at the beginning, at first I was sort of wondering when it took place, but it's like it took place before. I figured very quickly that it takes place after, well, before they get on the Serenity ship, because that just makes sense. But I thought initially that she'd somehow been captured again or
Sure,
something,
sure.
and that maybe this was another breakout, but and then it's revealed that it's not real. They're going through an old
They're watching a hologram or
hologram,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then there's Chiwetel Ejiofor, the man who is basically going to capture
yeah. I don't.
River.
I think he's unnamed in the movie. I don't
I
know.
think he's unnamed. I think in like if I could find it, I don't think he's given a name. I think
Yeah, he
like
is the villain of the piece.
hmm,
Who was just
the
hunting
primary,
down
yeah, the
River.
primary antagonist.
Yeah.
I
The
think no, sorry, you were gonna
I
say.
was just going to say that the villains, primary antagonists set up in the TV show, which we don't hear about, but yes, a series of 3 comics were released between the TV show and the movie,
Mm,
which wrap up some of those storylines
mm,
to get rid of those bad guys, so we can have a brand new bad guy for the movie
mm.
to answer the questions, I guess,
Yeah,
that were
yeah.
asked in the show.
So the film was actually distributed by Universal
Sure,
instead of Fox,
fair enough.
which is probably why it's not streaming with Firefly, because it's owned by a different company
That's fair enough.
that they do not own. It says here he's just the operative,
The operative, that's right.
but I don't think he needs a name. I don't think he.
No, that makes it more scary. He's an unnamed bad guy.
Yeah. And so then there's, and so by this point, Inara has left, Shepard has left, so it's just everyone else, though, is
Yeah.
on that ship.
Yeah.
And the film really delves more into River and her character and what she does. I guess sort of more of her backstory. That's what a lot of the film focuses on. And it's sort of revealed that she's psychic and she's got all these special powers, and she knows some secrets that they don't want to be revealed. Or well, the the operative says that she probably knows some secrets because she met some like big
Yeah. She's an
member.
empath, which, it's explained a bit in the show where she knows things about people, and people find that very unnerving when
Yeah,
this girl knows things about
yeah,
them.
and
And yeah, they delve into that more in the movie, and that's why they're trying to catch her, because she probably knows Alliance secrets that she
yeah,
don't want to
and
get out.
in the show, you sort of they're a bit like there's like little bits of dialogue that are very sort of like they don't really mean anything on their own, and then something sort of big happens, and then you're like, oh, that's what that means. This is she says something, and then something happens after that is like the same, like is related to what you just said.
Yeah, yeah. The movie is very much. I was going to say it's River's story. I'm not exactly sure it is, but yeah, she's very much the center, finding out what happened to her, um, and what the secret is that I guess she knows, and finding out what it means.
Mm. So then there's so they land on a planet because Simon wants to get off. He's sort of tired of this because he doesn't like Mal, and Mal doesn't seem to like him, and they keep at odds. And so then they get off at this place, and then River goes kind of a bit nuts and just like fights everyone in like a bar. And then he like
Great kick-ass action scene,
yeah,
absolutely.
and then he knocks her out with like a phrase in Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there's more conflict, and the show also there's plenty of conflict between Jane and Simon as well. Jane, it's probably because Jane sort of he usually agrees with Mal, and so he's sort of on his side basically, and so yeah, so that happens there at this place, and then they get a call from Inara, and so then Mal sneaks in like a what is it he's wearing?
They work out it's a trap because of the way they converse,
Mm.
and they know this guy's after them. Well, I don't know. At some point, they find out there's someone trying to catch them, or is this where they find out? Do they meet him for the first time?
I think they know he knows it's a trap, but he doesn't know exactly what it is. They don't exactly know
Right.
who he is, and I think then at this point
Yeah.
they
So
find out.
yeah, the operative is with Anara, and that's where Mel meets him, and there's the guy that's chasing them down.
And another time, and Mal is disguised he's disguised in the TV series as a woman.
Sure, it's always funny.
And he's talking about his floral bonnet.
Yes.
And how he will end you.
Yeah.
What is the quote again? It's like, by the power of my pretty floral bonnet, I will end you, or something like that. So then they are just able to escape because it's established that the operative is very skilled in martial arts and stuff, and he knocks him down, and they only are able to escape because an Arthur is like a flash bomb, basically, and they able to escape, and they get on their ship. And there is also there's a character called Mr. Universe, who is basically plugged into security cameras, and he talks to them, and they go through security camera footage just before River went mental, and they find she says the word Miranda, and they find it's a planet that they go to called Miranda.
Yeah, it's hard to find in the charts because it's sort of been erased from places. And they work out it's one of the secrets that they've been trying to keep a secret.
Yeah, and actually, sorry, we skipped past a bit at the beginning where the crew is doing a job, and so with Mal, Zoe, and Jane, and he takes River with him as well because she's very important and is very useful. And then the town is attacked by Reavers, and again, once as soon as they know there's Reavers there, they immediately
leaving.
want to leave, and he tells all these people to stay in this like basement because you won't be until you run out of air or something until you have to leave.
Yeah.
And so there's a chase sequence where they were chased by Reavers, and they're just able to barely escape, and then that's why Simon needs to leave because he River in danger.
Yeah.
From these Reavers. And so after they find this planet, they find that it is surrounded by Reavers.
Yeah.
And they go to where they meet. They meet Shepard, who has left them. Then they leave, and then they go back, and they find the town that Shepard is living in is massacred.
Yeah.
And spoilers, that Shepard is dead.
Yeah. The operative has just essentially just attacking everyone that Mal loves to make him bring River back.
Which was spoiled for me because of my younger sister, who said it when Shepard first appears, he dies. She said it as a joke, and you were like, spoilers, and I was very annoyed at both of you because I was just like, if you hadn't said anything, I wouldn't have thought anything.
Sure, sorry, my bad.
But it's also her fault because she said
I don't know. Yeah, it was a good guess on her part, or obviously she was just being funny.
And
but anyway,
so at this point, sort of Mal is he's very upset because he probably respects Book, at least somewhat, because he's a man who has faith and hasn't lost faith and is very he respects him.
He's angry also that the operative is just killing all these people to try to get to him and River. It's like that's obviously not a nice thing to do. So he is very determined to get through the Reavers and get to the planet.
Yeah. So they just take the ship and just paint it up, and they make it look like a Reaver ship, so they will pass through, and they strap a bunch of bodies to it, which the crew objects to because they're like, "Come on, we don't need to do this," and they do it anyway. Though.
Yeah, it has to be done to get to Miranda and find the secret of Miranda.
Yeah, and so we've got the whole crew besides Shepard, who is dead. But so they all hop they get to the planet, and it's completely desolated. There's a bunch of dead people everywhere, and there's sort of tension and sort of suspense of like, well, how are they all dead? Because they sort of realize and sort of explain that there's no struggle. There wasn't anything like this. None of this happened. They weren't killed.
There's no violence. There's no sense of wounds.
There's just there's someone in a ship. The ship hasn't even moved. There's no crack or anything. There's nothing to show that he died. There is just a body that is just decomposed. There's just a skeleton with skin.
Yeah.
And I think this is really quite scary actually, and really tense because it's you don't know what's going on. You just know this is a town of dead people.
Mm-hmm. What happened?
And is it at this point that they find that Reavers did this, or
no? So then they find the main science
lab,
I guess. Yeah, and they find a holographic recording from a scientist who tells them what's going on or what went on.
Mm-hmm. And so, played by Sarah Paulson.
Yeah, who's great. Love her.
It was in the opening credits, and because her name was in there, because I assume she was a big or somewhat of a star at this point.
Sure.
And so I was like, so she's in this, and then she hadn't appeared in the previous hour or whatever.
Yeah.
And then she's just a hologram for a few minutes, and I'm like, okay. So then they go through all of this, and then they find, and it's found out that this is where the Reavers come from.
Yeah.
And they were trying to sort of make these people less aggressive and violent.
Yeah.
And so most of them just died. They just stopped doing things.
Spoilers, but yeah.
Yeah, and because we know they died, but they just stopped eating, they stopped breathing, they stopped doing all the the basic human functions, which is why there's no struggle.
They just laid down and went to sleep and just didn't do anything till they died.
Yeah. And then, the Reavers are the opposite reaction to that. They got worse.
Yeah, a very small percentage of people went the other way and were just, hyper aggressive, and they became the Reavers. So, we discovered that the Alliance, trying to test out this drug on the people of this planet, created the first Reavers.
Yeah. And so then they talk to Mr. Universe to sort of drop this thing off, and then we find out that the Alliance has found him. NP is, spoilers, killed, and then they destroy his place, so there's nothing to do.
Yeah, they can't transmit.
Yeah, and then they leave, or they try to leave, and then are followed by a Reaver ship, which they then destroy, and then they are chased by like all the Reaver ships, basically.
Yeah.
And they lead them to the Alliance, and then there's just a space battle with the Alliance ships and the Reaver ships.
Yeah.
With the Serenity, trying to avoid all that.
Yes, they want to get to Mr. Universe to upload this tape so they can broadcast it to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And how are we going to get past all the Alliance ships who are coming for us? And Mel decides, well, let's take all the Reaver ships with us and let them battle it out while we try and escape.
Yeah, and so then the ship is damaged, and then it lands, and then the ship crashes, and then
Watch is killed.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
That is really sad.
Unexpected. He's just flown them through all this damage. Taken a little bit of damage, but kept them alive.
Yeah, he's
like a leaf on the wind.
Yeah,
and then is killed in front of Mal and Zoe, and it's things get bad from there. He's killed by a Reaver ship, I guess we should say.
Yeah.
Because the Reavers have followed them down there and are chasing them and are going to try and kill them.
This was also, unfortunately, spoiled for me as well.
Okay.
But like years ago.
Sure.
But like it's a thing I remember for some reason. It sucks. But I think still, even if sometimes if I know there's a death, I think there's still like the suspense of like when is it going to happen?
Yeah, sure.
Like even if I know it's going to happen, I'm like, well, when's it going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I guess I was going to talk about this earlier, but you told me not to, so we could save it for this. The third act. I would say the third act starts from sort of basically when they leave Miranda, or sort of like as the space battle is taking place.
I don't remember telling you not to say this, but sure.
No, you were telling. I was going to say that I think this third act is like one of the best third acts of a film.
Yeah, no.
I think it's because it's a true like culmination of this story, and because you've lost two members, because you've lost Shepard and you've lost Wash by this point.
Yeah.
So you're just like anybody else can die at this point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They are, and because it's a movie, it's not like the TV show where we're expecting to see him every week. Even though Joss is a fan of killing people on his shows, in a movie, anything's up for grabs. Because we don't expect another movie to be coming on this. They can kill off as many people as they want.
Yeah.
So the third act, I think, very much they talk to Mr. Universe and say we've got to come back and broadcast this to the world. That is what the third act is about.
Yeah,
I think, and so that's where it starts. And so huge
so
spaceship
they
battle.
crash and they land at his place, and so then they all get all their weapons, and they get everything, and they make a barricade, and they block the door and everything.
Yeah,
and they're all going to hold their ground and send Mal on his way. So
Mal goes on with the thing to get to Mr. Universe and broadcast this. He doesn't know he's dead at this point, obviously.
Yeah,
and they are just trying to buy him time by keeping the Reavers and the Alliance, I guess.
And and so they've all just got all their guns, they've got all these things, and so then this is where Simon sort of admits that he really likes Kaylee.
Sure.
And then
when you're about to die, that's when it's time to profess your love.
Yeah, because she's all worried about dying, and she's like, this is I don't want to die like this, and so he just admits that he likes her, which is a nice moment.
Yeah. His one regret of his time on the ship. And so that obviously spurs her on to, well, let's try and survive this.
And then so they, they're fighting these Reavers, and Zoe gets a little. She has just
careless. Lost her husband, so she's what is there to live for, sort of a thing. She's gonna sacrifice herself or whatever, and it certainly seems reasonable at that point that she might die.
Yeah.
And there's I don't know how. From this point on, where it's sort of intercutting between them fighting the Reavers and Mel with the operative slips past somehow, comes up another way to track Mel down and kill him before he can.
Because the operative takes an escape pod out, and I guess he somehow finds him, and so
Mel gets up, discovers that Mr. Universe is dead,
but his
Mr. Universe has got a robot there that says, "Hey Mal, it's me. They killed me. Guy with the sword. Very strange." And he tells him about an antenna and emergency broadcast up on the roof. that Mel can still get the signal out.
And then the operative, he gets into it as well, and he finds it. So then there's, two confrontations. There's Mal and the operative, and then there's the rest of the Serenity crew against the Reavers. It cuts back and forth, and it's very tense.
It is incredibly
because
tense.
because any of the characters can realistically die at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was thinking at least one more character is gonna die. I don't know who's gonna be.
Yeah.
But I was like, someone will die.
Which is again, what the whole point of killing off a character is. It makes every other character,
and so
in actual real jeopardy.
And so they sort of stuff is happening. They're all getting shot, and they're all getting hurt and everything. As they get moved back into the hallway, and Kaylee's shot with Reaver darts or something, which.
And they need some medicine, which has been left in the other room. And essentially, River, this is her time to shine.
Well, before that,
shine.
So Simon's he's going to get his back. He stands up and then gets shot immediately. The door didn't close properly all the way because there's a button that didn't close it, and I was like, he's gonna die. I was like, he's of all the characters he's probably gonna be the one to die.
Sure, he certainly seems the weakest, I guess, the most fragile. Let's go with
that. Maybe. Well, because he's just he professes his one regret, and I think it would it makes sense for character to have him not fulfill that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Part. So he gets shot, and then River talks about how he was the one always looking after her, and now it's her turn. So she jumps out, she throws the bag in, closes the door, and just kills all of the Reavers.
Just goes kung fu on all of them. It's just amazing.
And I think it's a really good because it's a really long, just one take of her just fighting all these Reavers, and they're all running at her, and she's just taking them all down. And because I saw a thing which was talking about the scene, how it feels legitimate, how they don't go at her one at a time. They're all just running at her, and she's just taking them all down.
Because the Reavers are just berserkers. They don't stop and think or anything. They're just running in constantly, and they don't have guns as such. They all have swords and sharp weapons, which seem much more dangerous as they're running at. It seems like a real threat to River.
And so she's just fighting them all, and it's in the cut with Mal and the operative, who at the very beginning of the film there's a bit where he with his hand he stabs someone in the rib,
just paralyzes them with
and then holds a sword out and they fall on it, but that doesn't work with Mal because that part was injured in the war, and so it got moved around, and so then he
did not get paralyzed.
So then he breaks his arms, and he punches him in the throat, and
he gets to puts the operative away,
but he doesn't kill him because he doesn't.
He wants him to watch, I guess, as Mel puts the message in there and broadcasts the message from the scientist about how they created the Reavers to the universe.
And then he makes the bridge, and he goes across, and he finds the crew all just beaten and bruised and dying and all that, and then the door opens, and then there's just River with an axe and a sword, and all the Reavers are dead.
Yeah,
which is a great shot.
It's amazing.
But
it's the Alliance, and what are they going to do?
And then they come in, the wall blows up, and then they're all getting ready to fire, and then the operative tells them not to
because the damage is done. The message has gone out.
Yeah,
there's nothing to be gained by killing them now.
And a part I noticed was Mal. One of his eyes is really because he was
red.
beaten.
It's full of blood.
It's full of blood, and it's just around the blue, and it really is very striking.
Yeah. He's in they're all in quite a bad way.
Yeah, and so the operative lets them leave, and they all leave. And there's a funeral, a memorial for Mr. Universe, Shepard, and Wash, which is nice, and then they all just continue on, and Inara comes back with them, and Mal and River are piloting the ship, and
they rebuild the ship.
Yeah, and they repaint it, and Simon and Kaylee get together. Finally, that's what you want to see.
Happy ending,
and then they fly off, and that's the end of the movie, and the end of Firefly on screen.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
They tie up all the threads they had started in the TV show, and yeah, another movie would have been nice with the different stories or whatever, but we did not get that.
But there are the comics, which are
Yes, plenty going
just
on
as
in the
good.
comics.
So, do you want to put a rating on the movie, and then
Sure,
we?
it's 10 out of 10.
Oh, we agree as again.
It's a great movie.
Yeah,
It is
it's a
lots
pretty
of great
great.
setups and payoffs.
Yeah,
And drawing on stuff from the show,
yeah, and it's
which if you haven't seen it, I guess you're not going to enjoy that as much.
yeah,
But yeah,
it's it pretty much as perfect a wrap up they could have done.
Yeah.
Considering the circumstances with a show that didn't end, was cancelled before they even really got a chance to do it.
Yeah.
And I think everything just wraps up perfectly. All the characters are together, all the everything's set in place, and that's the end of the Firefly universe as will be seen on screen.
Yeah.
And I don't think they should do any. They should do. I mean, if they were to do another series, I'd prefer if they do new characters. But even then, I don't think they should. I think this is something they should not touch.
Yeah. I don't think they will, because I don't think it has the audience to justify it.
And the audience they do have would be against it.
Yeah,
heavily.
yeah, probably. People in the Star Trek universe, people that love their Star Trek, hate the new Star Trek shows when they come out. So yeah, I can't imagine.
They love a new Firefly show.
Yeah, that's right.
So that was this week's episode. It was very long because
14 episodes in the movie to talk about.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on with this one.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a lot of fun.
I'm sure you'd like to come on again to talk about something else
Absolutely.
that we love.
We've got a few movies I think we've got on our list that we'll talk about when we've seen them.
Yeah. So thank you all for listening. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram. I've got the website is up and launched now. So I talked about this in a previous episode that I did. So that's really all. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.